This is how I got the job as an analyst. I use my laptop and Excel to manage my fantasy basketball league. It would like dial up the USA Today, download the stats, auto-populate the workbook, and like spit out the thing. And so I went to my interview with the management team, and I was like, look what I can do with Excel. I can manage this. And they were like, okay, you have the job. And that was a crucial moment in my career, from transition from customer care rep to like analyst, and kind of got me in the finance track.
Is this thing on?
Yesterday's price is not today's price.
Hey, welcome back to Run the Numbers, your favorite podcast for all things finance, strategy, and operations. We are here to make business fun. You'll also learn a bunch of cool stuff along the way about metrics, monetization models, and frameworks from top CFOs and the investors who fund them. Today, I have Fein on the show, the CFO of TextNow and the national chairman of the F-Suite, a professional group for CFOs. On this show, we go deep into what it's like to be acquired. Evan takes us through the complete life cycle of an acquisition where your company is the target. We've had a couple of guests come on the show to tell us what it's like to be buying other companies, but no one yet to give us the inside baseball and what it's like to be on the other side of the table. Evan explains what it's like to spend half your day on due diligence and the other half with blinders on, still running the company. He recalls the conversations he had with board members and his CEO, and he gives us the real take on if the CFO is usually the first to go. One more thing before we get to it. Do you like Yeti mugs? Do you like Run the Numbers? Go to your company's Slack or Microsoft Teams channel and tell your coworkers to check out the pod. Send us a pic as evidence to CJ at mostlymetrics.com, and we'll hook you up with a Yeti mug with our cool ass logo on it. I'm not quite sure if this will make me absolutely broke because they're like $85 a pop, so consider this my experiment in customer acquisition cost and CAC payback period. That's CJ at mostlymetrics.com. Share it with a big ass group so I don't go broke. Woo woo! Oh, all this and much, much more after a short word from our sponsors. Cash is king. As the CFO of a SaaS company, I know firsthand how important it is to maintain a healthy AR balance. If you can't effectively manage cash, you can't service debt, make payroll, or invest in growing your business. That's why I'm so excited to partner with the sponsor of today's episode, Maxio, the leading billing and financial operations platform for B2B SaaS. Maxio helps top SaaS companies like Chili Piper, Crunchbase, and Stack Overflow get cash in the door faster by automating collections and dunning. Gone are the days of manually chasing down invoices. Join the 2,500 plus subscription businesses using Maxio, formerly SaaS Optics and Chargeify, to eliminate revenue leakage and streamline order to cash. It's never been easier to get paid. Visit maxio.com/run the numbers to supercharge your financial operations in 2024. Not only does requesting a demo using the Run the Numbers link help support this podcast, ya boy, you also receive a 10% discount on your first year with Maxio. Woo! That's maxio.com/run the numbers. That's maxio.com/run the numbers. Ready to plan confidently, close faster, and report more accurately? Here's what sets Planful apart. Imagine purpose-built applications for every department, from FP&A to accounting, marketing to HR, all with built-in financial intelligence. It's easy to implement Planful in just weeks and with minimal IT involvement, so you can rapidly and seamlessly engage everyone across the business on your key financial progress. Best of all, Planful grows with you. Its unparalleled scalability ensures that no matter how fast your business expands, Planful can keep up. See why over 1,500 customers worldwide choose Planful as their flexible, user-friendly, end-to-end financial performance management platform. Oh yeah! Go to planful.com/metrics to see how you can reach peak financial performance with Planful. That's planful.com/metrics. Evan, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, CJ. Glad to be here.
I got to say at the top, we got introduced through our friends at F-Suite, and congrats on the recent merger. That's so exciting.
Yeah. I learned about F-Suite about a year ago. I merged my group, the Seattle Tech CFO group, with the F-Suite group, and I became the global chairman of F-Suite. So I'm really excited about being a part of that group too.
What's in store for the future? What do you got coming down the pike? Tell the listeners.
God, I mean, there's so much. For me, I have these two roles. I'm the CFO at TextNow. Well, I guess I have three roles. I'm the CFO at TextNow, TextNow makes cell phone service free. We just brought a really exciting new product to market where we're the only company that make data free as
Wow.
well. So you could cut the cord with AT&T, T-Mobile, Verizon, and use our cell phone service, and even be able to call an Uber or use Maps and not have to pay any money. So kind of growing TextNow is one of my passions, and then the second is figuring out how to make F-Suite great. I'm really a community builder. I grew the Seattle group for 14 years, and now I want to pour a lot of that passion into growing the F-Suite community, because I learned, just like you, CJ, I learn a ton from other CFOs. Oh my God, I'm such a better CFO by creating community. And so F-Suite has a lot to do there. And then, I'm a dad, I'm a husband, I'm a friend. So I don't know, I got 2 kids going to college, 2 in high school. So there's still a bunch of parenting challenges in front of me. And so I got a full plate.
Yeah, you got a lot of college bills too.
Yeah, no, I'm good. My oldest is a senior, so I got one more. I'll be glad to have one off the payroll.
Yeah, I'm the oldest of 6, and my dad had 4 kids within 6 years, like in the same time in college. And so
Oh my
poor guy,
gosh.
not only are the
Wow.
dinner bills high when we go out to Olive Garden, not that we really go to Olive Garden, but it's funny to say, free breadsticks, unlimited breadsticks, but like the college bills were pretty insufferable for a while. So thanks, Dad.
Oh man, yeah.
Evan, whenever somebody says it's free, my ears perk up, and I start to think, how is TextNow possibly free? How are you offering free texting and free data?
Yeah, that is the nut we cracked. So just like you could ask the same question of Hulu or Spotify. They have free. You can listen to music for free from Spotify, and you can watch TV for free from other networks. So we use the ad-based revenue model to subsidize our offering, and some people they can subsidize the complete offering, use ads. They don't pay anything, but it's a freemium version. So other people will pay to remove the ads, or they'll pay to add extra features, or they'll pay for more data. Maybe they want more than the data, the kind of the essential layer of data that we offer. Maybe they want enough data to watch TikTok or YouTube. So we always offer something for free, and that is monetized via our ad-based revenue. And then we offer other things that our users will pay for, just like Hulu or Spotify do.
So that's pretty innovative. You flipped kind of the cell phone model on its head.
Yeah. And guess what? We've been doing this profitably. Like, the tough nut to crack, was how to offer it for free to the consumer and make it profitable to TextNow. I'll tell you what. So I've been there 3 years, just more than 3 years. And one of the most amazing facts that got me, originally TextNow didn't meet like the profile of the company I thought I was looking for, and I could tell you why later. But the thing that got me into the company, I mean, there were a few big things. I was really passionate about helping the people that needed to be helped. Like our customers need the phone service to be free. But this year, TextNow is going to do $150 million in revenue on $1.5 million of invested capital.
Whoa.
So they have always had to grow the business through profits. There's been no invested capital to like suffer losses through. So they cracked the nut early, and I was just so impressed with like the discipline and innovation required to be profitable.
That's amazing. You don't hear those stories anymore. I remember, I think Klaviyo, who went public, marketing company earlier this year, they didn't raise a ton of capital, and like the founders still had a lot of equity by the time they went public. But I mean, you look at the pref stacks these days of any companies getting to scale. I mean, it really gets up there.
Yeah, I was working with an investment bank who did some research in PitchBook, and they said less than 1% of companies with greater than 100 million had raised like less than $5 or $10 million. So it's really rarefied air.
That's incredible. And you came from a background that was linked to the telecom and cell industry before, right? So, I mean, you had context on how the business model probably worked, and this probably struck you as like, wait, you can make money off of that?
Yeah, so one of my first jobs out of college, this is such an interesting story. I was hired as a customer care rep in 1995 at VoiceStream Wireless. VoiceStream was like one of the original cell phone companies that was based on new licenses auctioned by the FCC. And my job was to help people, like when their phone had a problem, they would call up the number and I would be like, welcome to VoiceStream, how can I help you?
Like a grandmother would call you like, excuse me, this thing doesn't dial out. It keeps going off my pocket.
Yeah, but the customer care group didn't have like an analyst function. And I had a math degree, and this is how I got the job as an analyst. I used my laptop and Excel to manage my fantasy basketball league. It would like dial up the USA Today, download the stats, auto-populate the workbook, and like spit out the thing. And so I went to my interview with the management team, and I was like, look what I can do with Excel. I can manage this. And they were like, okay, you have the job. And that was a crucial moment in my career, from transition from customer care rep to like analyst, and kind of got me in the finance track with the cellular company, which, VoiceStream eventually became T-Mobile. T-Mobile bought it in 2001 or 2002. So I left in 2000 before that transaction, but it was very early days. It was like the Nokia. It was way before even Blackberries and so forth. So this was cell phone like V1 or V2.
If I brought my fantasy football team into an interview, they'd be like, this guy loses most games. Please do not hire him.
Well, yeah, I don't know if I was winning, but I was keeping track.
It was analytical, at least. Yeah. Speaking of analytics, I want to talk about metrics. So, Evan, what are the most important metrics that you focus on as a CFO in the telecom industry?
TextNow. So we're like, we don't call ourselves a TextNow company. We're like, we provide phone service through an app.
Yeah. So you're a telecom company, you're a software company. Like what do you tell friends you are? What bucket are you in?
We would be like WhatsApp or other. Sometimes we're like Pinterest. Oh, they're powered by ads. So we put kind of a few together. We can have telecom comps. We can have app-based comps, ad-based comps. So there's a few comps, but we do have metrics that are probably common to all of those three. I care a lot. I call like the kernel of our metrics, our LTV and LTV to CAC ratios. Okay. That is, we're monitoring that every month. We have a very close partnership with our marketing team to maintain healthy ratios. We've got guardrails to make sure the ratios are attractive. So that is probably, the financial metric. Of course, there are customer and NPS scores and kind of customer metrics that I would call more important, but the kind of the kernel financial metric I would call the most important one is LTV, and then the LTV to CAC ratio would be close second.
Are there any misconceptions about either LTV or CAC? Like any ways that people either calculate them wrong or apply them wrong to whatever scenarios they're dealing with?
I'll just own there's a lot of imperfections, because I want to try to capture the full value of a customer when we acquire a customer. So I have to predict how long they're going to stay, and then I have to predict what future monetization is going to be like when they're here, X years. So I feel like I have good data points to predict how long they're going to stay, because we know like how long the last cohort stayed, and maybe like the next cohort stays like 0.5% longer or 1% longer or something. So retention is not really the risky part. But like future monetization is the part where I'm putting my finger in the air, because generally we do improve monetization. We do generally do that year over year. However, since a lot of our revenue comes from ads, we are a price taker in that market. That is a volatile market. In 2021, ad prices were very high. It was very healthy, and that exceeded our expectations a lot. And in 2022, it was very low. I'm trying to get the full value of the LTV, because if I give us not enough credit for the LTV, then I will not allow the marketing team to spend enough on user acquisition, and we won't grow as fast. But if I give us too much credit, we'll overspend, and either we won't hit the EBITDA margins we want, or there'll be some profitability miss. So I'm just acknowledging we're vulnerable in that we have to predict future monetizations rates, and then also we do a little bit of NPVing of the. So now we're out multiple years. Most of the retention, most of the use is in the first 2 years. So it's not like, oh my God, this guy's predicting somebody's going to be there 10 years. Like 3/4 of their revenue is coming in the first 2 years. So I'm not that exposed. But I have to consider the time value of money for those revenues coming. So those are probably the two trickiest parts of the LTV is the time value of money and then that future monetization. That's where I feel kind of exposed in my calculation.
I'm so glad you said the time value of money component, because people never talk about that, Evan. When I ask them about LTV to CAC, they're either like, I'm not too sure about my churn rate, or I think I'm like front loading the costs here. The time value of money is so important.
Yeah. And I mean, we have a high cost of capital. These startups like us, we've got a high cost of capital every year. It's 15 to 20%. So, I want to honor my finance teacher and finance teachers. And when I got my MBA, so yeah, I gotta, bake that in. So we bake that in for like years 3 and 4 on that stub revenue that represents 25% of it. We'll discount that back.
I'm in a bit of a different business model, but the way that I've chalked it up to is, I have a baseline product that they're going to use, and I'm going to get some sort of revenue from that. But where I'm putting my finger in the air is what modules are they going to attach to? So what are the secondary and third revenue bites at the apple I'm going to get from them? And then is there a product that like we're going to invent down the line that I have to say in year 5, they're also going to attach to? So I totally feel for you there when you're saying like, what revenue can I attribute to this customer in the long term?
Yeah. We're living in the same world. I'm expecting some uplift in future monetization because we've got it in the past, and I can't tell you exactly where it's going to come from, but I know it'll be greater than 0.
Hey, thanks for listening. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. Okay, serious question for all my accounting pros here today. Are you doing what you were hired to do? What I mean is, do you have time to actually be a business partner, or are you buried in tedious manual tasks just to get your journal entries prepared every month? I know how that feels. Leapfin's here to help with that. Leapfin is accounting automation software that automatically prepares and posts reliable journal entries. And that's just the beginning. High-growth businesses like Reddit, Canva, and Seeky choose Leapfin to eliminate manual tasks, accelerate month-end close, and enable accounting leaders like you to provide faster insights that will help your company grow. If you're battling messy transaction data from Stripe, Adyen, Shopify, Apple Pay, and other PSPs, and then battling again to get it all into NetSuite, go to leapfin.com to watch their short product intro video. And if you like what you see, request a 15-minute conversation to learn how accounting automation can help you and your team. Check out leapfin.com today. That's leap like jump, fin like shark. I just made that up. I hope they're okay with it. Leapfin.com. Mercury knows your financial operations are complex. Founders and finance teams have to pull together different tools, reconcile transactions from different sources, and struggle to get accurate answers. With Mercury, you can simplify your operations with banking and software that power your critical financial workflows, all within the one thing every business needs, a bank account. And with new bill pay and accounting capabilities, you can pay bills faster, stay in control of company spend, and speed up reconciliation. Apply in minutes at Mercury.com and join over 200,000, ambitious startups that trust Mercury to provide the precision, control, and focus they need to transform their financial workflows so they can perform at their best. Mercury, the art of simplified finances. Mercury is a financial technology company, not a bank. Banking services provided by Choice Financial Group and Evolve Bank and Trust. Members FDIC. I'm getting good at that voice. Quick math, the less your business spends on operations, on multiple systems, on delivering your product or service, the more margin you have and the more money you keep. That's the goal, isn't it? But with higher expenses on materials, employees, distribution, and borrowing, everything costs more. Yesterday's price is not today's price. So to reduce costs and headaches, smart businesses are graduating to NetSuite by Oracle. NetSuite is the #1 cloud financial system, bringing accounting, financial management, inventory, HR into one platform and one source of truth. With NetSuite, you reduce IT costs because NetSuite lives in the cloud with no hardware required. Access from anywhere. You cut the cost of maintaining multiple systems because you've got one unified business management suite. You improve efficiency by bringing all your major business processes into one platform, slashing manual tasks and errors. Over 37,000 companies, wow, that's a lot of customers, have already made the move. So do the math. See how you'll profit with NetSuite. And back by popular demand, NetSuite has extended its one-of-a-kind flexible financing program for a few more weeks. Head to netsuite.com/metrics. That is netsuite.com/metrics. Ooh, yeah, you know your boy loves some metrics. That's netsuite.com/metrics. Please do it, guys. I really need this. So, favorite metric of mine when I was working at a private equity firm and I was responsible for valuing the portfolio of Telecom tower holdings was ARPU. And so I haven't studied it in like 7 years or whatever it is, but average revenue per user, is that a metric that you look at TextNow?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We're doing a big kind of redo, I guess, of our key metrics now. So revenue will be broken down into customers, and then we're going to define in an app. You have to be thoughtful on what is a customer. Is a customer just a person who opens up your app, or do they like do something in the app? Like, oh no. For Spotify, you don't just open up the app. You like play a song for 15 seconds or something. And for TextNow, do you just open up the app, or do you like engage with the app? Maybe you check your contacts, you send a text, you make a phone call. So there's a definition of customers, and then there is definitely the ARPU component. We have multiple revenue streams, not just the ad revenue stream. And so we hold our monetization team kind of accountable for the different ARPU metrics that we have. Some of them we have much more control over. The ones where our users part with their own money, they're much more predictable. I wouldn't say we have control, but they're highly predictable. And the ones that are just purely based on the ad market, those are less predictable. They're more volatile. So yes, we care a lot about ARPU. We're looking at it year over year, and predicting how it will grow in the future.
Evan, can we talk about definition of a customer? Because this is a topic I'm super passionate about, because sometimes I'll go through an S1 or a 10K and I'll realize that some companies are maybe changing the goalposts a bit on how they define one. And sometimes it's like totally truthful and it makes sense. And other times it's kind of like, whoa, well, that's just going to make like your net dollar retention rate higher. One that did make a lot of sense to me was, I remember Twilio when they IPO'd, they were having a hard time on what they define a customer, because a lot of it was actually coming across as almost like B2C usage instead of B2B usage. And I think they said you have to spend a minimum of either like $5 or $20 per month in order to be considered a customer. And then there are companies like Dropbox, and I think they're like, you have to, you can't be just a free user. You have to actually give us money for it. So how do you square up like what a customer is versus a user?
Yeah. Oh my God. Such a good question. We're having that debate right now. I had a meeting this morning to talk about that very issue, because there's two sides of the coin. You might want to tie it to a metric that most matches our revenue model. And frankly, when a person opens our app, we're already generating revenue because they open the app and an ad shows up. So they haven't got any value from it, but they've generated revenue from us. So some people are like, that should be a customer because it's tying to the revenue model. But other people, and where I sit, is like, no, we're in the business of providing phone service. Like, the customer has to be doing one of these like high engagement actions, to make a call, send or receive a call, send or receive a text, check their contacts, check their account, something like that. So the debate is happening right now. I think we'll wind up in the second of the two, which is and it has to be in the last 28 days. They have to have done one of those, call it high engagement actions. And that qualifies them to be a customer. And then we'll kind of bifurcate, we'll triage those customers. Oh, we've got our ones that are most active. Those are we've got such percent of our loyal customers. Another percent pay they pay with their own money. So they're in it. So then we'll triage from there. But the first one is, how do you get in the door? And I believe we're going to trend towards, they do like some high engagement action.
That's awesome. High engagement action. Shout out to Ben Williams. He was VP of product at Sneak and worked at CloudBees before that. And he's this savant friend of mine when it comes to product-led growth. And me and him would have this debate all the time about like, what's an active user? And it's not just like logging in. It has to be something, he would say, that's demonstrable of the product's value. So like maybe a TextNow, it's if you actually send a text or something like that.
Right. Exactly right. That's what there's like 6 actions which demonstrate you're getting some use out of the app. And that will, I think, will demonstrate a customer.
Yeah. So sometimes I really nerd out on these topics, but I was reading through GitLab, who is in like the developer space, they're 10K. And I was looking at like the crazy number of free users they had versus paid. And like their metrics would look completely different if they counted everybody who was costing them something. But then in the back of my mind, I was like, how do you square that up as a CFO if you have all these users where you're not monetizing them all? You're basically making a bet on like this portfolio of users that they'll eventually become paid. What's cool about your business model, Evan, is you at least get dollars from the start, even if it's like advertising dollars, it's less predictable.
Yep. The moment you use the app, we're monetizing you. Yeah. Come right. Yeah. Use it as much as you want, as little as you want. We're going to monetize you all along the way. And in fact, every time you use the app, we make a little bit of money because it's gross margin positive. We're never losing along the way. We're always winning.
How do you measure and manage churn? Are there any favorite churn metrics that you look to day to day?
Yeah, so we're big on retention curves, and so we measure retention at certain points. There's like what's their so after they've registered, registering is a big act. You download the app and then you fill out like the profile and like your account is open. So that's a big point in the funnel. And then we start counting from there at certain points. We know if you've done something, like if you've done one of these high engagement action and within the first 3 days, oh my God, your retention curve looks pretty good compared to some people that don't. So we're very focused on like pushing high engagement actions in this first few days to get you on the longer tail healthy retention curves. But anyway, we're trying to manipulate you up the retention curve, and then we're measuring the retention curve at certain fixed points after registration, and making sure that generally we want the curves to like be shifting up. You know what I mean? Over time, not shifting
climbing
down.
up the right side of the paper, as I like to say.
Yeah. Climbing up the right side of the paper, exactly right.
It's funny, there's so many analogs to the company I work at where we're an auto parts procurement platform, and we want to get you to 5 orders within 7 days. Like we found that that's the habit forming, behavior shifting metric. And we always look to that, like, because you look at the cohorts, and if you were able to usher them through that process and get them there, it's like a demonstrably higher retention rate over time.
Yeah, absolutely. We have just that business.
Evan, when I'm doing research for the podcast, I like to find something that people are passionate about, maybe one thing that they're an expert on. And I'm excited to talk to you about companies getting acquired and being at a company that's getting acquired. We've interviewed lots of people on the show about doing acquisitions. Most recently, we talked to Paul Muley of Arcadia, but we've never dug into what it's like to be on the other side of the table. So maybe to kick things off in your experience, are there different flavors of acquisitions?
Yeah. So first, let me talk about my experience. So yes, I to your first point, I have bought a business before when I was at Impinj, a company I was the CFO at for 18 years. And I have sold 2 businesses before at Impinj. I sold a business, and the company I was last CFO of, Chef Software, we sold in 2020 in October of 2020 to a strategic acquirer. So have some experience in that. Gosh, so many different types. I mean, one of the big differences is, are you being bought by a PE firm? Mm-hmm. And then it's like, what nature of PE firm are you? Are you being bought by a financial investor? Is it a PE firm? Are they EBITDA focused or growth focused? Like that's a whole, there's flavor. You could pick apart the onion, so many layers on that. And then there's the strategic, angle. Are you being bought by another company? Are they going to like fold you in or let you run kind of open loop? Do they want to integrate you into their company, or do they want you to run solo? Those are kind of 2 different things that you need to think about. They're 2 different, pretty big different M&A types to think about at the forefront.
Got it. So at Chef, you were acquired by, was that a strategic or was that a PE firm?
That was the strategic, Progress Software.
Got it. And so that's probably a different diligence process than a PE firm, right? Because they're looking at direct synergies.
Yes. Yeah. So man, one of the things I learned in that, I have been through an IPO and several M&A. So just first a big shout out to the difference between the 2. Yeah. In an IPO, I thought an IPO was going to be a high diligence operation. Yeah. The highest diligence operation is when you're selling your company. Of course, it makes sense. They're making a much bigger bet because they're buying the whole darn business. So they knew the acquiring company, the kind of call it final 3 or 4 parties that were interested in buying Chef Software, the amount of homework they do. I kind of was surprised by it. I mean, in hindsight, I shouldn't have been because it makes perfect sense. but oh my God, they pick apart the business. So meeting after meeting, get down in the details, ask very thoughtful questions. And the IPO investors, they're not doing the investment banks do a lot of the diligence, and two, the bigger investors, when you're on the roadshow, will ask you good questions, but they're really kind of doing reasonableness checks, I guess, and they'll do some backdoor customer checks, but they're not doing half as much. I would say they're doing a third or a quarter as much diligence on an IPO as what's being done by a potential acquiring company or PE firm on an M&A. So one, just different between IPO and M&A. Two, yeah, different between PE firm and strategic when they want to acquire. The strategic wants to know a lot more about the team they're acquiring. One, it's the quality of the people that are going to get in there and interview different people and start to make assessments even before the deal closes. They're going to understand the org chart and who does what much better, much differently in order to address synergies than the PE firm. The PE firm will do that a little bit because they might have some of their own plays that they want to run, but not nearly to the same extent. So that would be one of the main differences between the diligence done by the PE firm and the strategic acquirer.
That's great context. I never thought about comparing IPO versus acquisition. And I guess it does make a lot of sense that they'd want to get under the hood because you're taking the entire thing. You're not just buying a piece of it. Like
Right.
If you're an investor on the
Right.
public market, maybe you build to a stake of, say, 5% max usually, because after that you have to disclose every move you make and every trade.
Right.
But if you're buying 100%, like you own the damn thing now.
Right. And also as an IPO, you can get in and get out. Oh, if you realize you made a mistake, you just get out whenever you want, and it's illiquid, right? When you're buying the whole thing, you can't get out whenever you want.
You mentioned diligence, Evan. So as a CFO, you're in this unique spot where you have to run the due diligence on one hand, right? You're the best position to give the other party info, but you also have to keep running the company to make sure it achieves the results in that plan that you gave them. How hard is it to kind of have two different sides of your mind during the process?
Yeah, it is hard. You need a good team around you. You need a right-hand person. I've always had a good right-hand person that I could rely on, and you need an excellent investment bank that you can rely on. And more, the investment banks are doing more for the company. But it used to be that the company ran the financial model. And then the investment bank would kind of help with the financial model, but they wouldn't really run it. And now I think the investment banks just kind of run the whole financial model. The last time I was in a process, they make sure the customer data cube matches up to the financial model and do all the checking. So you can ask more of your investment bank than you used to. And that's very helpful in allowing you to keep proper balance between the company, and the process. And you have to have a good team. And then you have to be able to clear the decks and communicate with the management team and others, like what's reasonable and what's not. And then it's still always hard during planning season, oh gosh, if you're in a process and you're in your own planning season, for me, it's always been Q4, just really, really hard on the company to be able to do that. So definitely one of the biggest challenges.
Are there any data points or kind of sections of the diligence process that are usually the long pole in the tent or the hangout?
Yeah, no, I think the customer data, this having been in a few, our ability to generate customer data cubes is much better, right? We have more data about our customers than we've ever had. So now the acquiring company or the PE firms so we just hand over a huge file and we let them do their own. We used to hand them reports on look at our retention curves, they're so fancy. Oh, look at our net retention, it's so good. Now we just hand them the cube and they run all their analysis that they want. And so, but before you do that, you have to, we would hand the cube to the investment bank. The investment bank, they try to break it. They try to say, why does the model say you're going to grow this 15% when it's been declining 12% year over year? No surprises. So you got to treat a good investment bank is trying to find that's why you have to take, oh my God, one of the things I learned, you must take proper time to prepare on the front. You don't go to market until like the investment bank has found all the leaky parts of the story and you have those addressed and you're like your customer. I don't go to market until the customer cube kind of matches the financial story. That's one big learning I've had, and that is the trickiest part, I would say, of the diligence process. Everything. That's, I guess the second one is share bad news early. Sometimes my company's been being investigated by a governmental authority. I'm going to share that on like the second or third meeting. Not share bad news early is the big one. And then here's a third learning I had that I didn't always have, but now I have. In the first, you're not trying to have an optimistic model. I've changed my thinking on this. For the next, call it 18 months, for the next year I'm in, plus the year after that, I want a very conservative model because you might be in market a year and a half. Don't miss those numbers. Do not bake in optimism. Start baking in optimism after that, and you can have rapid curves. But I used to be more optimistic early. Do you know what I mean? I used to be more optimistic early. And now I'm not. I'm very realistic for the next year and a half. And then I bake in a little optimism in the second and a half year, and then more optimism after that to show what's possible.
Evan, that's exactly the inside baseball that people come to the podcast for, because on the surface, you'd say this thing is going to be valued off of either a multiple of revenue or EBITDA. I'm going to pump this thing up. But you're saying you got to be careful, either like if this process drags on for 3 to 6 months, you want to be hitting the milestone markers throughout it. You don't want to look like crap during the process if you miss it. And you're also saying it's probably going to be the same set of buyers potentially 18 months down the road, and they're going to have your old model to reference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you're in the market of building trust, like you understand your business. You're only going to get credit for that optimism if you hit the numbers for the next year anyway. Otherwise, it's all going to come crashing down. You're going to look like you don't know your business. They're going to cut your numbers way deeper than you would have cut them if you just generated a realistic model, And that took me some like I had some misses. I had quite a few misses before I figured that out. Some painful ones.
Yeah, I'm glad you highlighted that, because like I said, it's counterintuitive. I'd be thinking like, let's get this number as high as possible. Like if it's a sale, it's a one-time event. Let's maximize the outcome. It's not like someone's investing in you, and over time you got to show up every quarter to that board meeting and say, yes, we hit the number or not. But to your point, like you gotta play the whole life cycle of how long this thing takes to go down.
That's right. Yeah, you don't really know how long you'll be in market. It can be twice as long, 3 times as long as you think.
As a CFO, you're also, the right-hand person and confidant to the CEO. What types of conversations go down during a process?
Man, yeah, such a good question. One, you really have to know why you are going to market. It is so important to are you selling the entire company, or are you just raising like some capital? Are you selling primary shares or second? You have to know the why. And then when you know the why, you have to know, like, are there some limits to the transaction? Are you willing to sell a majority of the company? Are you willing to sell all of the company, or are you just selling a minority of the company? Like those, and sometimes, a lot of times, you don't know all that. Like, you don't know all that when you go to market. Like price can matter on that. It's understand, but you need to be having those conversations. That with the CEO needs to be very thoughtful about that and honest with that, with the board, with major shareholders, and with the investment bank. Don't waste the investment bank's time on a strategic if you're not willing to sell the company. Oh my God, just save everybody's time. So those are really thoughtful conversations, and then being thoughtful on control provisions that are important to you in the negotiation of any deal. If you're not selling the whole company, but just selling a piece of the company, being very thoughtful about control provisions are really important to you, I would say. And then, boy, the CEO's just got to be thoughtful on, sometimes if it's a founder CEO, it's probably more important that the CEO wants someone who's buying into the mission. Like they're buying into the mission, and they're not turning it into this EBITDA play, but they're going to like take it to the next level of the mission. So the CEO's got to be thoughtful and communicate, I'm looking for an investor, to buy 40%, and we're going to take it from wherever stage we are now, to the next 2 stages alongside this mission. Well, that's one profile of investor, as opposed to, I've been doing this for 15 years, I'm ready to do something else. So you just have to know like where you are in the life cycle, because the CEO is either signing up for something else, or they're like ready to tap out and do something different. And so all of those have to be communicated really effectively, and you don't have to
Right.
know everything, but you have to say what you don't know.
And what about how you communicate with your investment bankers? Because they are your hired advisors, but I mean, there are incentives in all of this. And I remember a CFO friend of mine said, remember that investment bankers can make you very rich, but you are the product. And you always have to remember that they're selling you. Are there any points of friction that can ever come up when it's, down to brass tacks and negotiating?
Yeah, good question. Well, one, so I always run a bake-off front end
Okay.
to choose my investment bank. And then once we hire them, I bring them fully inside the tent. If we're feeling some softness in the forecast, they're the first to know. I am never trying to, my problems need to be their problems because they can help us manage those, understand them, talk about them, so, and that is really, I do not view them as an outsider while I'm going to market. I view now, when we get down to like negotiations at the very, very end, I think that can start to diverge. But I do think you need to start from, if you don't trust them as your partner, then you shouldn't have hired them. Honestly, you know what I mean? Like you got to trust them as your partner and share all the bad news early. So I definitely take that approach. And God, I mean, and then I negotiate a fair deal up front. And if I negotiated a fair deal up front, I tend not to look at those things, later. Hopefully I've negotiated a deal where the outcomes for them are the same, whether they're selling a 30% stake versus the whole thing. I try to be thoughtful on that in the front end so I don't have to worry about that on the back end. Now, on an IPO, it can definitely get in your way. On an IPO, those incentives have caused me a lot of problems on the eve of a deal.
Can you say more about that?
Yeah. On an IPO, one, they'll want you to upsize. Okay, when you have an IPO, you are a risky asset. You have never gone public before, so investors don't really know how you're going to perform. They don't really know much about your company. So you're offering your shares at a discount. You're not 10 years in market. They've never even heard, you're explaining your business to them. They've never heard you. So you're offering your shares at a discount. So you're trying to offer like the least amount of shares you can at a discount, but in order to get sufficient liquidity and then get big investors who matter and look impressive and so forth. But your syndicate is only going to get paid once on that IPO, and then you might have a new. So as you go to market, and let's say I consider $14, that's what we're going to go to market for, but I think we're worth $20. I'm going to limit the number of shares we're selling at 14, and they want to be there. We were at Impinj, we were 16 times oversubscribed. So they wanted us, not only did we go to the top of the range, they wanted us to expand the deal size, like the quantity of shares we were offering. And we did not want to do that. Why would we sell more shares at a discount, right? Why? But that would have been good they would have been paid more, and that was bad for us. So we got also on the eve of the IPO, we got into it. Oh my God, I thought, I was so naive. I mean, it was one of the biggest lessons. I thought we were going to be drinking and celebrating and the road show was done. We had a successful IPO, 16, and instead we got into a huge argument about the size of the deal on the eve of the IPO. So that's the kind of things that I'm talking about that are different.
So you found yourself yelling at each other when you thought you'd be popping champagne.
Yes, exactly right.
Back. That's an incredible story. Back to acquisitions and communicating with investment bankers. If you're a younger CFO or finance professional listening to this podcast, any advice you'd impart on them on just how to work with investment bankers, how to negotiate fees, how to negotiate earnouts, anything like that you could leave people with?
Yeah. Well, so one, just I choose bankers that I trust a lot. Like you got to feel comfortable that you're trusting with, and you have to make sure you're going to get the managing director's time, like that the deal is important to them. You don't want to feel like the managing director is doing you a favor. You want to feel like they're lucky to be on your deal.
Such a good point.
You know what I mean? So yeah, because sometimes I've had managing directors that like did the IBM deal, and then they're on my deal, and I was like, well, how did that make any sense? Like, we're not IBM. Why does that make any sense? So that did not, that does not go well. So you have to have a managing director whose deal you're important to. You got to trust it, but though you're going to work with them, whatever. That's not the only people you're going to work with. You're going to work with the associates and the analysts and the vice presidents, and you have to have a great relationship with them. Well, I would go to dinner with them. I would spend a lot of time on calls with them. So that's about the team building part of it. And then I guess with regard to the letter, I would lean on my lawyers to help with negotiating that and what was fair in terms of my board, I guess, and my lawyers help me deal with what's market. And you're trying to equalize for any outcome. In other words, not have them be rewarded for some financial outcomes instead of other ones. You know what I mean? But like make the rewards. If you get equal rewards, have them get equal rewards. Not like have an M&A be more rewarding than an IPO or whatever the case may be. So try to be thoughtful about the rewards, but always, I have also had investment banks where we just renegotiated the letter because it made no sense. And honestly, if you have the right investment bank, they're not trying to win the transaction, like they view themselves as having a longer term relationship too. And so if they're not willing to like touch the whatever, there's balance to that. Like they're not just going to rip it up. But if they're not willing to touch it, maybe they're not right for you too, because they want to be able to count you as a reference. It could be a long-term relationship.
You got to play long-term games with long-term people, even though it's just one transaction. Like it's a pretty small ecosystem.
It is, yeah. And it's all based on trust. And you're developing a reputation too. Oh my God, your reputation matters so much. They're talking to other people, and you want to be known as a reputable CFO.
Any tips around managing board expectations throughout the process? Because it's not just like employees or the C-suite that can get kind of anxious or, frenetic energy. How do you deal with the board?
Yeah. So I always have a board subcommittee that is signed up for being responsive. They'll get on a call Sunday night. They're close to the process so that there's somebody from the board other than the CEO kind of knows what's going on every step of the way, because they're protecting you in the you don't want to be like accused of not bringing the board along.
Never fail alone.
Yes, you don't want to fail alone. So you have a board subcommittee that you're bringing pretty close at every key milestone. Even more, twice, 3 times as frequently as board meetings.
Got it.
And then in the board meetings, I just always had the investment bank come to the board meeting if it's a multi-quarter process, which they all are. They're 9 months to a year or maybe more. So I would have the board just come and give an update on the process right to the board, and maybe more than board meetings, depending on how frequently your board meetings are. So so board subcommittees to work closely with management and the investment bank, and then investment bank presenting directly to the board at every board meetings to make sure they feel close. And then they're going to be misaligned. Oh my God. Okay. So the board has fiduciary obligations to act in the interest of all shareholders, but they forget that, they don't remember. And then they put their shareholder hats on pretty quickly. Cause remember, they have they have fiduciary obligations to their LPs, but sometimes they forget which hat they're supposed to wear. So it can be very frustrating because they're just human and whatever, that you can tell when they're representing their shareholders versus all of your company's shareholders. So you got to be on the watch for that.
And there's so many like weird mechanical things that can get in the way that you don't anticipate coming up, because it has nothing to do with the company's performance. It's more like, well, the fund life cycle that I'm invested out of is 5 years old and this person's only 1 year old, and weird quirks like that.
Right. And that manifests. So some people will take a much lower price because they just need to provide a return to their shareholders. And another person's fund's got 10 more years and they need this one to be the winner, So you can really have diverse interests. It's very hard when you have like multiple financial shareholders.
Diverse interest is such a good way to put it, because there are all different things that I think come out pretty quickly in a process that make it seem like, oh, wow, there are some underlying incentives here. Like I said, that have nothing to do with what our revenue was last quarter.
Yeah.
One more question, maybe. There's an old joke that CFOs are usually the first to go. You want to look out for your shareholders, your employees' fiduciary responsibility. That always comes first. You are secondary to all that. But what goes through your head as the CFO? Because to a certain extent, you got to think about what your next chapter is.
For me, I always wanted that outcome because the successful sale of a company is just really enhances, my CFO's resume, if you will. I knew I would always be treated well if that happened. They have their CFO. Like, I got my eyes open. They would hire me if they wanted
Yeah,
me to be their
they already
CFO. They
got
would have
one.
hired me a while ago. Yeah, they already got one. So I knew I would be treated well. And man, do I just really like that time off? Like, it allows me to refresh. It allows me to connect with my family, my friends, reconsider what I want to do next. So I really ran towards that. Like, I enjoyed that quite a bit. I had no problems with that. Now I assumed people would take good care of me, and actually I don't think I ever felt like I wasn't taken care
Yeah.
of. I felt like, and I never felt like I had to advocate for myself. Maybe once I did, but I don't think too many times I felt like I had to advocate for myself.
It was funny. I was having beers with a CFO friend of mine, and he was telling the story of like getting so excited about this deal. And then he's like, and then I noticed that by doing this deal, I was actually going to be out of a job pretty soon. And he goes, then I got anxious, but then I got excited because that's awesome because I think they're going to take care of me. So he was just explaining how he went through like all these different emotions throughout the process.
Yeah, yeah.
Evan, I'm going to take you into what we call our long ass lightning round. So I ask everybody, you're a successful guy. Can you give us one thing you've screwed up on the job? It could be at this job or a different one.
Man, that is a long list. I have screwed up so many times. I'll tell you things I'm working on my leadership development plan now. I'm always trying to become a better leader. And so things I'm working on now, when I feel like things are going off track and people and they're misunderstood or they're not realized or they're not being appreciated, I get anxious and I'll like try to control the room, or I stop being a good listener and I start trying to like control the decision, and I lose the buy-in. I lose the room. You know what I mean? Like, I'm trying to control the outcome because I think we're trying to cure cancer, but we're not trying to cure cancer. You know what I mean? So that is something I do wrong, not just once, but a lot of times I do wrong. So I got to be able to sit in that uncomfortableness, you know what I mean, and have the confidence to know it'll play out and like do less controlling and railroading of that outcome.
Yeah, I've had the exact same reaction you have a lot of times, so that resonates.
And it's hard for CFO. Honestly, if we're just being honest, our job is to like try to control outcomes. Like,
I know
that's our job, is to try to predict and control stuff, and now you're telling us not to.
I don't do well in the ambiguity. If you could tell your younger self something knowing what you know today, what would you tell him?
Yeah, I was so, in my early stage, I see this in a lot of emerging CFOs. I was so like anxious to get promoted, so worried about like collecting my nuts, my rewards, my awards, my promotions, my raises, like there wasn't going to be enough.
Yeah. Scarcity complex. You got to stash it all.
Yeah. I had a scarcity complex. Yeah. And that just undermined my own image in front of others. They were like, well, what's he worried? Does he think he's not going to be good enough in the future? Man, if I could tell my younger self, it's like the opposite. If you can let go of that. I mean, it's easy to do. Like, I understand you also need to be able to pay the bills, and you have a family.
Right.
So I'm just honoring that, but still I did it too much. And I should have let things play out. It shows more confidence in yourself. You've got choices, you've got alternatives. I didn't have to like overmanage or over pursue, all the rewards and the nuts. I just could have let them come to me. And I didn't realize that as early as I wish I would have.
Yeah, if you act calm and cool and collective, it's like the cute girl in high school who like acts like she doesn't care. People want what they think they can't have.
Right. That's right. Good analogy.
Can you walk me through your finance software stack? What tools are you using today to close the books and get the job done?
Yeah. We're NetSuite shop. Our FP&A product is Vena.
Oh, nice.
Like Vena a lot. Other key parts of our stack. Oh my God, we use Carta for equity management. I'm a huge fan.
Big fan of Carta. Yeah, we've had Charlie Kevers on the podcast, their CFO. I'm a Carta fanboy.
Yeah. No, I like Carta's a little bit weak. We're Canadian and U.S. companies, so they're weak in Canada, but they're strong in the U.S. God, what other tools are we? We're a Tableau shop. I use a lot of Tableau for analytics. What tools am I missing? God, yeah, we bill through Google. We're serving up our ads.
Cool.
So I guess we use Stripe.
Yeah.
No, we're a Stripe shop. Yeah, we just consolidated a few different payment providers into Stripe. So I like Stripe. Stripe treated us right.
Anything for procurement, or are you still doing all that manually?
We do that manually. We looked at a few and decided to continue to do that manually.
You're going to get a bunch of hungry BDRs from procurement places hitting you up after this podcast. Sorry, man.
Sorry.
Last one I got for you. What's the craziest thing you've ever had someone try to expense as a CFO?
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm not going to out the person, but I did have an executive assistant at a prior job who just got out over her skis and started using the card to take her boyfriend to casinos, first for meals and then it became hotels.
What?
And then she was actually putting, proceeds for gambling on she clearly had a problem. You asked me the craziest. It was the craziest. That it lasted like 6 weeks because, of course, the bills come, and people look at the bill. There's all these casinos on the bill, why would we need to be spending so much money at a casino? So that was a crazy thing that was my EA that happened to.
Wow. That's a nutty one.
Yeah.
That's a first for the pod. Evan, this has been amazing. I really appreciate you coming on, and thanks for all the wisdom and advice.
Yeah, great talking to you, CJ. I enjoyed it.
Run the Numbers is a mostly LLC production. Yelling an intro by Fat Joe. Artwork by some AI thingamajig. Podcast and video editing is done by Cleancast at cleancast.io. Nothing said on this podcast is intended to be business or investment advice. It's the sole opinion of me, a guy who feeds his dog too much ice cream and has a history of net operating losses, LOL. If you like this podcast, please hit subscribe. It would mean a lot to me. And also check out mostlymetrics.com. That's my newsletter where I explore business models and financial metrics. Thanks for riding with me. Share this with your friends. Peace.